Hey witches, heathens, pagans, welcome back to the channel. For those new here, my name is Tiffany. So in this video, we're going to be doing a deep historical dive on the winter solstice, Yule, Christmas, and we're also going to be looking at how Odin really inspired who we now know to be as Santa Claus. I want to give a brief disclaimer that the information that I have gathered is from trusted sources, and if you see me looking down, it is because I am looking at my notes, but I want to make sure that I'm giving you the most accurate and historical context as possible. A lot of this information I had to go back to really when written text started to take place. But there is some historical records that I will be referencing. So starting with the winter solstice. Winter solstice marks the longest night and the shortest day of the year. It's celebrated on December 21st in the Northern Hemisphere and on June 21st in the Southern Hemisphere. So this night really was to welcome back the sun, welcome back life, prosperity, and to help to warm the homes of the Germanic and Norse people. Because they didn't have electricity, they didn't have any of the modern conveniences that we now have. And so there's also contextual evidence that the winter solstice was celebrated and honored even in the Neolithic eras. But the first written records of Yule with this celebration actually took place in the 5th and 6th centuries, according to Germanic texts of the Gothic calendar. And in the Viking and the Norse era, we have evidence that it took place around the 8th and 11th centuries. And Christianization took place in the 9th century on December 25th, 335 AD. So we can see that there's a bit of a stretch and a gap between the winter solstice, Yule celebrations, and when Christianization really took place. So going back to Yule. Yule is honoring life, bringing back life. So the Norse and Germanic peoples would take big Yule trees, the whole tree, and put it into the fireplace. And they would burn it from the solstice all the way till January 1st, which is 12 nights. So Yule is actually celebrated for 12 days. Which now we know as the 12 days of Christmas. And this really was to encourage the light back into the home, back into the lives of the people. And what we now know as the Yule log on TV, this was an actual log that these people would go, often it was oak, ash, and they would bring the whole entire tree to burn. And oftentimes the ashes from the tree they would use to help plant and really help to make sure that the soil was fertile. But there's a lot of symbolism in this. So oftentimes there were decorations thrown on the Yule log, and people really started to embrace that more, especially in the Germanic texts, to help carry on this tradition. So let's go back to Odin. Odin is the All-Father of the Norse people, and he's also known as the Yule Father. And he put on a procession, a haunting hunt, also known as the Wild Hunt, around the solstice, around Yule. And the people would think that because of the nasty weather, with the rain and the chaos and the wind and the thunder, everything like that, that he would be up in the skies with this wild hunt. And this would symbolize chaos, death, but also the thinning of the veil. And it was believed that he did this with Valkyries, with fairies, with elves, with gnomes. We're starting to put a lot of this together. And he would also do this with his 8-legged horse named Sleipnir. So it was believed that if offerings were left for his horse, like hay or carrots or anything like that, that he would leave other presents for the children or the people who left offerings for him. So, and Odin, he had a long beard, a long gray beard, and he wore a cloak. So we're starting to see a lot of the resemblance between him and Santa Claus. So as Christianity began to spread, a lot of the pagan traditions and the Yule celebrations starting to merge with the Christian holidays. So now we're going to move into Saint Nick. So Saint Nick was named after a Greek monk who became a bishop. And he had so much influence on the Greek and all of these people, and also going into European people. So he was admired for his generosity, for his kindness, and for his love of children. So then we start to see how a lot of this context starts to kind of take on a life of its own through a Christianity lens. But there's so much influence from Odin, and a lot of people begin to wonder, well, is Odin actually Santa Claus? And the answer to that is no. There's so many resemblance, but that's not the case. So what Saint Nicholas turned into was also known as Sinterklaas from the Dutch culture. It was such an important piece for the Dutch culture that it started to take on its own resemblance. And what we know now to be Santa Claus, that started to come in the 18th century. His influence spread, and once the Dutch started to settle in the Americas, that's really when Santa Claus became its own thing. You know, it's the beard and the hat and the cloak and everything like that, and how, you know, the presents were really celebrated and passed to people. So we can really see how so much of the pagan traditions are embedded in these holidays. So going back to the Yule log, there's also a Yule log cake that was actually invented by the French. And that's what a lot of us do around the holidays. We will, you know, really either light a real Yule log, or we will put it on the TV, or we will take part in this cake. But the intention behind this Yule log is to bring back warmth, vitality, love, and the sweetness of life. Because back in those days, it was really harsh. There was a lot of famine, there was a lot of death, there was so much harshness in that time period that they really were starting to bring a lot more of the life back. And the Germanic peoples started to actually bring trees into the homes to symbolize rebirth, evergreens, evergreen life, joy, and then they started to decorate that. So there's so much symbolism in this time of year. I really just wanted to make sure that everybody knew really the roots of that. So key takeaways from this: to celebrate Yule, you could make your own Yule log. You can go out and get your own log and decorate that and burn it with your coven. You can burn it with yourself, or you can make a Yule log to eat. As we know, with witchcraft, symbolism and intention is everything. So while we don't have the same trials that the ancient peoples of Europe, Germany, and the Norse peoples, we can still carry on the traditions in our ancestry. And also this time, it represents a thinning of the veil. So you may feel more connected to loved ones, people who have passed. This may be a really big celebration for a lot of your ancestors. I know for me, I was putting up my tree and I was trying to find this little foot pedal where I could just press so I didn't have to go back behind the tree to light up the tree. Talk about modern conveniences. And I was talking to my husband and I was like, I can't find the foot pedal. Like, where is it? Because I was going through totes and boxes and everything. And he's like, I don't know. It should be in the totes. And back in my room where I stored everything, my cat wasn't in there. There was no other presence in that room. But all of a sudden I hear a big bang. And I'm like, what the heck was that? So I go back in there and I'm like, well, nobody's in here. So, and I look around and I look in a tote and I'm like, there's the foot pedal. So that to me was probably one of my ancestors saying, hey, look here. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you feel a deeper connection, a deeper rooted connection to people around this holiday. And I've also researched that this time is a really great time to commune with your ancestors. It's very similar to Samhain. So lighting those torches and making a plate for your past loved ones would be a really excellent way to celebrate and honor their life. So, but I hope that this little blip of history helped connect the dots, connect the pieces, and to see how badass Odin really is and how ancient he is and how inspirational he is. So, you know, lighting anything for him, anything with a lot of Germanic roots, Norse roots will be helpful during this time. I know I feel very connected to my ancient Germanic and Norse peoples during this time of year, but whatever you do to celebrate, do it in your way and do it with intention and with passion. So, but I hope that you glean some insight from this, and I hope you guys have a wonderful winter solstice, Yule, whatever you celebrate. Blessed be. Bye.